Now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. This is Janet, and I welcome you to our webinar. We're going to get started right away. Our webinar today is titled, "The Pressure is On, How to Build Your Caregiver Resilience." And I'm so glad you took the time to join with us. This is such an important topic. All right. A couple announcements as we get started and as people continue to join. Just so you know, my next webinar is going to be called Self-Compassion for Caregivers. It's a great technique and something very helpful for folks. So I hope you'll register for it when you get the follow-up email on the next day or two. And we'll be recording it, so even if you can't make that particular date, sign up so that you get the follow-up email, which has the recording. And before we start, I want to let you know about my books and other products that are available on my website at affirmyourself.com, or you can order them from Amazon or your local bookstore, especially the books. I just want to mention that the audiobook, if you're going to search for it on Amazon, you need to put in MP3. That's the format for the book. So search MP3 and then put Finding Meaning with Charles, and it should pop up. And that's an audiobook that I actually recorded. Feel free. I see there's a question already in here, which I'll address at the end. And you've got that question box in that right-hand panel, so feel free to type any questions for me anytime during the webinar, and I'll try to get to them all when we're finished at the end of the webinar. So let me quickly tell you a little bit about my background, especially for those of you that haven't been on one of my webinars before. From a career standpoint, I have a master's degree from Georgia State University and over 30 years experience in leadership within the worksite health promotion field. Worked for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts as my latest one. However, if you've participated in our webinars before, you know that I took care of my husband, Charles, during the 5 years he faced a movement disorder with dementia. It was an atypical Parkinsonian disorder. I am also a past chair of the board of directors for Cure PSP, and I've been a support group leader for 2 online groups and 1 face-to-face group for over 10 years for these atypical Parkinson's diseases, which include progressive supranuclear palsy, cortical basal degeneration, MSA, multiple system atrophy, Lewy body dementia, etc. So those are the ones that are people that are in my groups. And I currently live in South Portland, Maine. Let's get right into it. As we think about the pressure being on for caregivers, consider what your capacity is to handle the challenges that you're facing. Like the egret here in the picture sitting next to the alligator, that egret needs to be prepared to fly away and have the ability to do that if he gets threatened. So take a moment and think about a current challenge you are facing or that you've recently experienced as a caregiver. Maybe it's like one of the following situations. Your car breaks down, or you get a flat tire, you need maintenance, or it could just be any other major or even a daily frustration. Or the last straw for a day where so many things went wrong. The pharmacy gave you the wrong medication and you didn't realize it until you got home. Things like that can really throw you for a loop. Or maybe a big challenge like the unexpected hospital stay with your loved one. Or maybe just a dip in his or her symptoms that now requires extra effort to understand and care for. As you think about the many challenges you have faced as a caregiver, think about how quickly did you bounce back from each of them? Did it take a while? Did you bounce back fairly quickly? Also, Caregiving has many transitions that bring challenges. Has the resulting stress from these challenges made you feel sad, stressed, or stretched? If so, building your resilience can help you handle these challenges and bounce back from them. But first, know that your feelings are valid. Give yourself time to feel your feelings deeply. It helps to have someone sit with you and listen to your experiences objectively. But once you've acknowledged and come to grips with the feelings, having the tools for resilience will help you move forward without all of your strengths getting depleted. That's what we really want to avoid. Why do we need to build resilience? What's in it for us? Building resilience creates stamina and strength. It helps sustain your health, your well-being, and capacity to care for your loved one. It expands your capacity in general for these challenges. It reduces your vulnerability to stress. Building resilience allows you to be less discouraged by setbacks and disappointments. It makes it more likely that you can move past the challenge instead of fixating on it. Building resilience makes space for you to learn from mistakes and criticisms. And it will help you view challenging situations from a broader, more positive perspective and help you recover more quickly from failure and disappointment. Jane Hamilton said it so well. Resilience helps transform the daunting to the doable. I love that. So what is resilience? Resilience is your ability to withstand, recover, and sometimes even grow when faced with adversity. It's an active process of enduring and successfully coping. Resilience is when you need to close the gap between what we expect everything to go well and smoothly, right? And then what actually happens, which are those disruptions, the chaos, the crises, the challenges. This is a gap between the way we expected the world to be and what is actually happening. Sometimes we see these disruptions coming, and sometimes they're a total surprise. They can range from very minor to deeply traumatic. Some pass quickly, some linger on. It takes valuable energy to handle these disruptions and to close the gap. If the disruptions are too large, or you encounter too many of them at one time, you know how they hit you one after the other, you may run out of energy and start to break down. And I bet a lot of you can relate to that. I certainly could during my caregiving years. So resilience gets to how we manage the curveballs of life. Resilience means bouncing back and recovering after a crisis or difficulties. It is being able to maintain well-being and effective functioning in the face of high levels of disruption. It involves adapting well in the face of adversity, disappointments, and stress. Resilience takes durability and hardiness. By building more resilience, the hope is that the time to recover is not too long. In fact, we can even look at the capacity for resilience to be more than just bouncing back. It also is the capacity to grow from the experience and to bounce forward to adjust to the new normal. When we become more resilient, we develop flexibility that allows us to handle adversity, accept what can't be changed, and to learn from failures. Building your resilience muscle, and think of it as a muscle, something that you need to build, reduces your fear to take small risks to help you move forward to resolve the issues you are facing. Ann Fraser and Linda Hoops say it in their blog. Each person has the seeds of resilience within them. I hope that gives you hope. Each person has the seeds of the resilience within them. And research backs that up. Studies show that we can develop resilience, but it takes practice. That's that muscle we've got to work on, right? So let's look at some practical tips we can take to build our resilience. Let's look at some ways that we can build our resilience. The first way I'd like to share with you about building resilience is to explore, to focus on moments that still create positive emotions. Focus on moments that still create positive emotions. I promise you, they are there. So positive emotions are a foundation for building resilience. Barbara Fredrickson, who is a PhD psychologist, researcher, conducted a study after 9/11. She looked at the data she had collected on college students prior to 9/11 that in the past evaluated their amount of positivity. Then after 9/11, she found that those students demonstrating positivity and positive emotions and optimism before 9/11 were more resilient after 9/11. See how core those positive emotions are to resilience. Positive emotions stem from an optimistic outlook on life. This outlook includes valuing things like love, awe, happiness, joy, pride, inspiration, gratitude, serenity, and hope. These positive emotions that I just listed, which we can all develop, it's just our attitude to choose to do so. These allow us to thrive and flourish despite diversity and adversity. And they open us up to more creativity. When we have more optimism, we can see difficult situations as a challenge instead of a threat. We're going to kind of keep that theme going. How do we see it as a challenge instead of a threat? And we can even be right in the midst of the challenge and still experience some positive emotions like gratitude and hope, which can buoy us up. In fact, according to Barbara Fredrickson, positivity matters especially during trying times. It's not just something we need when things are going well. We need it especially when things are hard. Positivity is the active ingredient that enables us to attain resilient outcomes. Those of us who bounce back show more emotional complexity when facing stressors because our positivity sits side by side with our negativity and our challenges, and then we don't have to wallow in them. So that's the complexity. We can have positives and negatives happening at the same time, but because we have this foundation of positivity, we can get through those negatives. So positivity may well be our best resource in a crisis. So going back to my tip, one way to build our resilience is in difficult situations or daily frustrations is to focus on moments that still create positive emotions. So some of those moments might be things like this. And think about what moments you've had where you could hold on to for as being a little mini positive emotional thing. So here's some that I thought about. Your loved one saying, I love you. A smile from your loved one. A visit from a cherished family member, like a child or a grandchild. You know, a favorite song comes on the radio or you put it on your iTunes. You admire a beautiful sunset or sunrise. You're enjoying a delicious goodie. You receive a thinking of you card from someone. And you get positivity when you share your love and your joy with other people. Or you say thank you, give gratitude to people who are helping you out. These moments don't have to be big things. A way to really focus on these moments is to write them down. Keep a little notebook or a journal of these small experiences of positive emotions. Again, I promise they're there. You just have to look for them and hold on to them when you see them. And then if you write them down, you can reflect on them later. You can reflect on them in the evening or reflect on them when you're having a hard time. And hold on tightly to them. They can provide a platform from which you can move forward. So focus on moments that create positive emotions. The next suggestion for building resilience is to take time to reach out to your social connections. This is a proactive approach. It's not waiting for people to reach out to you. You reach out. Crisis intervention is a team endeavor. If you are able to build strong connections with others and reach out to them when you need help, you can go well beyond the limits of your own energy and resolve issues that may seem impossible for one person to handle. You've got your whole team there of supporters helping you. And these connections in and of themselves help with resilience, not even when you're having a struggle, but building up that resilience. When we are socially connected and not isolated, we get a boost of positive emotions that serve to provide a reservoir that we can then call on when faced with a challenge in the future. And if you kind of feel like you're in your home and hard to get out and see people, make some phone calls. The next tip to build resilience is to face fear. Don't shy away from it. How do you see your difficult situations? As a challenge or as a threat? If we start to see it as something we can tackle, we will not be intimidated by it or paralyzed by it. We can, in fact, face our fear. Certainly acknowledge your fear, but don't let it stop you. Acting in spite of fear to accomplish what is needed makes you stronger, and that builds your resilience. The next tip to build resilience is to find role models. Take a moment to identify people that have faced challenges successfully. Okay, you can identify real people, living or dead, but you can also look at fictional characters, famous individuals, or historic figures. Once you identify these, observe what they do to handle their stressful situations and build resilience to get through. Then replicate the small aspects of their behavior that has led to positivity and the desired outcomes as they handle their adversity. So just learning by observing these other people that you see as role models. So I can think of one very clearly. So when Charles was midway through his disease, Christopher Reeves, the guy who played Superman, had his terrible accident on his horse and became a paraplegic. I actually found and admired the strength and the attitude of his wife, Dana. Dana had so much strength and grace and love to help him be the most he could be after this terrible accident. And I believe that Christopher Reeves continued to have an influence until he died because of Dana being there with her strength and hope and love. That was something that gave me encouragement. She was I didn't know her, but she was a role model for me on how to be a caregiver. So find your role models. The next tip to build your resilience is to replace negative thoughts with positive ones. Begin by building realistic optimism. As soon as a negative thought comes, replace it with a positive and yet realistic one. When something positive happens, on the other hand, stop to acknowledge and appreciate the good. The more you challenge negative thinking and reinforce positive aspects of life, the more optimistic and resilient you will become. Stop and ask yourself things like this. How can I change my perspective to think more positively about it? Or ask yourself, what am I feeling? What am I concerned about? And then, most importantly, what can I do about it? These questions take you in a positive direction and minimize overemphasizing the negative, like, oh my goodness, where you just ruminate over all the negative. These at least help you to think forward. We talked about negative thinking patterns from psychologist Martin Seligman during my previous webinar titled Persisting in the Face of Caregiver Difficulties, Switching from Pessimism to Optimism. You can view that video, that webinar, as well as other recorded webinars that I have on my YouTube channel. And I'll tell you a little bit later how to do that. But I think these things deserve repeating because they really fit in with what we're talking about here about switching from negative thinking to positive. So take a look at the difference between these two thinkers. Let's look at how the negative, the pessimist thinks. It's all my fault. I'm the reason for the failure. It's going to last and affect my whole life. Like this thing's never going to end, right? Bad things always happen to me. Why? Or I might as well stop trying. I won't be successful. Things just aren't working out for me. That's the negative pessimistic thinking. Well, let's contrast that with positive thinking. And a positive thinker will say, I know why this happened and I can correct it. It doesn't have to happen again. That's if there was a mistake or a problem. You could just say if something went wrong, I had a bad day, I had an off day. Or you could say, this bad thing is temporary and besides, it's only one part of my life. And then finally, I'm confident that I could change it with persistence and a better strategy. So whatever went wrong, whatever hiccup you had in your caregiving, have a positive attitude that you will get through it. So in summary on pessimism and optimism, the pessimist sees difficulties, crises, and mistakes as permanent. They're never going to end. Persuasive, they're going to affect my whole life. And personalized, it's all my fault. Where the optimist sees it as temporary, okay, this is going to get over, I'm going to get through this. Specific, it only has to deal with this one issue. And external, I don't have to take it personally. I think those are good things to think about and how to change your thinking. And Jane Hamilton sums it up so nicely. Listen to your thoughts. They create your reality. Wow. Our next tip for building resilience is to recall how you bounced back in the past. Learn from how you did it well before. What did you do in those circumstances when you bounced back and coped well? We can learn so much by considering when we've done this well in the past and then now replicate it for the new situations coming up. Ask yourself, what allowed you to get to the other side? What skills and mental processes did you employ to get there? What thoughts, choices, or behaviors did you use? These give you examples of the resilience you have within you. So a skill I've used in the past that helps me with new challenges is my desire. I make a commitment to stay positive and to look what can still be done instead of what is changed or what is lost. So now with new challenges, apply these same strategies that have worked for you in the past to build your resilience and to be able to handle the new challenges. The final tip on this list, I've got some other strategies for you, but the final tip on this list is in building your resilience is to find purpose and value. Now again, I did a webinar, last webinar was on finding meaning as a caregiver, and you can find that on my YouTube channel, which I'll tell you about at the end of the webinar. But this gets to our fundamental belief system to find purpose and value. Can there be meaning and purpose in our adversity, our challenges, our difficulties, and our frustrations? I believe the answer to that is yes. I certainly have experienced that. And research shows that resilient survivors find meaning, purpose, and value in difficult circumstances. So here's what to do. First, choose to be a victor rather than a victim. That's a choice you can make. Know that we are all born with the ability to be made better by life's difficulties. I love that. We are all born with the ability to be made better by life's difficulties. Resilience can help us change our perspective from seeing caregiving as a trap, which is not unusual. We all get to that point at times, to seeing caregiving as an opportunity for growth and love. Use adversity as a catalyst for growth. As some famous person said, I don't know who, never let a crisis go to waste. That opportunity for growth can be one way to experience purpose and meaning. Just the chance that you're growing gives you some meaning for having dealt with this caregiving experience. Ask yourself, is there anything good about this experience for me? How is this changing me? What can I learn from this? So at the end of each day, especially difficult ones, ask yourself, what have I learned today? Try to identify at least one thing. Part of finding meaning is to accept and embrace what life has handed you. People most likely to cope well with rough challenges are the ones who fully accept what has happened. Those that don't find themselves psychologically drained and exhausted. You can also focus on the greater purpose of what you are doing with your caregiving itself. So I know it gave me a great sense of pride and meaning when I was able to give Charles the best possible life that he had left, and to keep him going in his goals and desires even as his disease advanced. So one thing he was committed to doing is running. He committed to run every day. And you can see here, even if it took me and another person, we kept him running. He also, picture on the right, this is us traveling somewhere, I'm not sure where. He wanted to travel. My mom would say, after my mom died, my mom would say, gee, I'm going to go with this group and we're going to go to, XYZ place. And then Charles would say, I want to go too. So we kept traveling, even when it took a lot of people coming with us to help us. But that gave me tremendous meaning. Know that this was a source of happiness for Charles, a source of him feeling like he was still able to live his life, at least to some degree, with so many losses. So that's a way that I found meaning and purpose. So these were the ways that I just shared to develop resilience. And to build your resilience, I want to now switch to some concepts called micro-resilience. These are concepts from the book Micro-Resilience by St. John and Haynes. Now, micro-resilience, these are the little things we can do, just the teeny things day by day, versus what might be macro-resilience. Now, macro-resilience will be how you make your body hardy, get enough sleep, eat well, exercise, get help, professional help if you need it, manage your stress. Those are the macro things that we do and over time help us build resilience. The micro resilience gives us that little boost of resilience right then and there. So first, think of a sponge. When you squeeze a sponge, it will always spring back to its normal shape. All right, that's the bounce back that we're talking about in resilience. But what if you could do even better than that? Could we bounce back even better than normal? That's what St. John and Haynes try to lay out in their new book. They describe the little things we can do day by day to develop more resilience. This is the way to develop our resilience muscle as well. And these don't take a lot of time or even lots of effort. We just have to be mindful of them and try to employ them and practice them. So here are some of we're going to take each one of these one at a time. They're micro-resilience tips. The first is to take short time outs. For some of you, that might only be 5 or 10 minutes where you have to, scurry away to the bathroom. And that's fine. That's at least some time out. However, if you get more time out for yourself, please take it. These time outs give you a short little sort of island in the stream. You're on your little island while the water's rushing by. You can do these ad hoc, every now and then, or a little bit of time as it appears, or you can schedule that time and then make sure that your loved one and others know that's your scheduled time out. Having the oasis of a timeout can help you better focus. You may be amazed at how you get some interesting and helpful insights by getting the short period of time for yourself. Our mental acuity can get restored when we stop for short periods of time and give our brains a rest. The next micro-resilience technique is to make important decisions early in the day. Studies have shown that we make better decisions earlier in the day or after we have been renewed from a meal or a timeout. So as a caregiver, you are constantly making decisions all throughout the day, lots of little ones, right? Lots of little solving mini crises. But research shows that as the day goes on, our decision-making capacity gets compromised. So if you know you've got a big decision, a change in medication you have to think about, or new treatments you need to talk about, or physical therapist is coming, you need to figure out what is the most important thing you want to work with them on. Those big decisions, do them early in the day or when you're the most rested. The next micro-resilience tip is to name the feeling. Studies have shown that we can distance ourselves from a feeling when we simply come up with a name for it. Angry, frustrated, vulnerable, ashamed, concerned, anxious, nervous. And there's a lot more up there on the chart. Researchers from UCLA found that naming a feeling disrupts the threat response that happens in our primitive unconscious brain by increasing activity in the thinking and rational part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex. This works as instead of being consumed by our reactions, we can scrutinize them as an impartial observer. Naming the feeling helps us tamp down our primitive alarm system that responds automatically to threats and stress. And then you can realize that you have the power to choose an appropriate emotional response. Just naming the thought can help take away its power. You can take this one step further, and after naming the emotion, try to flip it, to relabel it from a more positive point of view. So let me give you an example. Let's say you named a feeling of being anxious. Well, you could relabel that as excitement or feelings of intense caring. Just flips that name to something more positive. The next tip is to make a love box. When I shared my sadness that Charles no longer said, "I love you," due to his disease, my social worker while Charles was on hospice suggested I make a love box that I could refer to in order to uplift me. She encouraged me to put in any old letters, cards, and such from Charles that I had saved over the years. I was fortunate, as Charles had kept notes from our early dating. I had that notepad, all of our early dates and what happened. which was amazing and filled me with joy to read. The authors of Micro-Resilience suggest something similar. They call it a joy kit. In your joy kit, you could put photos, mementos, thank you notes, and such. You can make an actual physical kit or a digital one. Then keep it handy for times when you're experiencing a down moment. When you really know that you need to build some resilience, bring that out. Finally, the last micro-resilience tip that I'd like to share with you is to use a power pose. So have any of you seen Amy Cuddy's TED Talk? It's one of the most watched TED Talks. So you can go to www.ted.com and search Amy Cuddy and it'll pop up. I encourage you to watch it. Amy is a professor at Harvard Business School, and she's researched the connection between our mind and our body. She found that our body responds physically to the poses that we do, how we're standing and sitting. So for instance, if we close up physically, where we kind of slump our shoulders and drop our head, we feel more submissive. But if we go big and open our stance and our arms, for example, we'll reduce our stress hormones, which make us feel stronger, less afraid, and more confident. Then, if we act confident, because now our body's feeling confident, we could become more confident. It helps us become more confident. So I do a power pose before I make a presentation. I do a lot of presentations and trainings. I'll go in the restroom and do a power pose, and it helps beef up my confidence and just make me feel good and excited about doing my training. So think about when you could use a power pose before having to correct a home health aide for something they're not doing quite right, or in the morning before facing your day, or before visiting your loved one's doctor. So this Wonder Woman picture is an example of a power pose. It's, her hands on hips, chin up, wide stance. That shows power. And then that physical goes into the brain to actually make you feel more powerful and confident. Let me show you some other poses that Amy Cuddy shows in her TED Talk. Here's another one. Arms back, feet up. Casual, arm across, feet widely spread. Or again, that standing pose, hands on hip. But I would put my chin up on this one. So those are all the tips I wanted to share with you today. I'd like you to think about what your action plan is of what I talked about. A lot of them may not resonate with you, but I hope at least one did. And what will that one be that you want to try to do and make a habit and a ritual for you going forward? Now, before I give you my final quote, I hope you'll stick around for it. I want to answer your questions. So again, feel free to type your questions in the question box in that panel on the right, and I'm going to open that up now and answer them for you as best I can. Let's see what we have so far. Whoops. Let's open it up here. Here we go. Give me a moment while I open it and expand it so I can read it. There we go. All right, first one is from Sharon. She says, when your husband has Parkinson's and you feel that your life together is gradually ending, how to cope with this? Oh my goodness, I so relate to that. Parkinson's and the disease, the atypical Parkinson's disease that Charles had, takes away so many capabilities. And especially as Parkinson's progresses into the end stages, where there's less conversation, less ability to talk and understand, less interest because of the apathy. You won't know all these things that you're experiencing. How to cope with this? First of all, I think you need to grieve. I think you need to grieve the losses. They're real. Get a grief book. I read a grief book about this time when Charles was still alive. It really helped me. Talk to a counselor. some professional that will help. And then try some of the things that we talked about today for resilience. Try to positively bring more positivity into your life. Like, look for those positive moments, like the smile, the little things that can buoy you up. But bottom line, you do have to grieve and realize that things are changing, and just find those opportunities for love and connection. And the love and connection is going to be very different. It might now just be a touch, a hand on the shoulder, a hand on the leg, holding hands. It's going to be different things, but cherish those because they're still very helpful and they really do connect you. All right, Janice asks, do you have suggestions for websites for anticipatory grieving? Oh, that really fits into what I just said. Janice hadn't even looked at that before I talked about grieving with Sharon. So, yes, what I was describing with Sharon is anticipatory grief. And I have done a webinar on it. I think it might be up in my YouTube channel, so you can look there and watch that. And then I would just say, just go and Google anticipatory grief, and you will find a lot up there on that. Some great sites. I would look in a lot of hospice sites because they're very good at understanding this. They're the ones that help me understand it as well. And those of you that when you get to the more end stages and you are on hospice, definitely use the social worker and the nurses to get the support, build that team to help you. James just mentioned, thank you. You're welcome, James. I hope you got some things out of it. The last question I see here is from Wendy. Would you please provide information on the online phone support group for the atypical Parkinson's? My husband has PSP. Oh my goodness, Wendy. Any of you that have PSP, CBD, MSA, let me talk to you first. Some of you might have just Parkinson's, and I don't have the online support groups for that. But for PSP, CBD, MSA, go to curepsp.org, curepsp.org, and then hit the tab at the right top, which gives the menu, and go all the way at the bottom of the menu, and there'll be a whole list of things that are in the website, and go to forum. And in that forum is a support group. That forum is a support group. It's called Smart Patients. You can sign up for that, and you can you can type on that and get search on that, get all kinds of answers. That's the first one. When you're on the Cure PSP website, go to the tab at the top that says I need support. Click on that, and then you'll see face-to-face support groups and online support groups. Now, I teach an online one for care partners of PSP, so you can look for that, and someone else does there. There's also one for CBD, and then there's some for patients also for PSP, CBD, and MSA, and there's some for caregivers of MSA. So that would be the online support groups. Again, curepsp.org. At the top button, it says, I need support or I want support. Click on that. Find the tab that says support groups and just keep working your way till you find those. I also learned from my group that there is a Facebook page for PSP caregiver. Maybe it's just PSP. I'm not sure if it's caregivers. So I was just on there finding it. You can go, if you're on Facebook, go on Facebook, and in the search, type progressive supranuclear palsy, and then go to the one that has the hummingbird on it, and you can sign up for that. The MSA website also has opportunities, but the MSA support groups are through Cure PSP. But the MSA website has, and many of you, if you have MSA, are dealing with that, know about that website. Lewy Body Dementia, go to Lewy Body Dementia Association, lbda.org, and that'll get you to what they have, but I am not sure. They have the face-to-face support groups listed there, and they're much more numerous because it's a more common disease. So maybe you can find something face-to-face, those of you that are dealing with that. So I hope that was helpful. You're welcome. All right, I don't see any more questions. So with that, I'm going to go to my final quote. Oh, I got a few announcements to make. Don't forget about my next webinar. You'll get the link in the, hopefully, in the follow-up emails, and it's on self-compassion. Here's my YouTube. So if you go to YouTube, www.youtube.com, and you type in Janet Edmondson, you can go down until you find my channel and subscribe. And then there's a whole bunch. You just can keep scrolling to find the various webinars that I've done in the past and see which ones might be helpful for you. All free, all available to you on my YouTube channel. Again, don't forget about the books I have available for you if you'd like to hear about our story and how we got through. My final quote for you is from Elizabeth Edwards. Now, many of you may know her. She was the wife of John Edwards, who was a politician and a Democratic presidential candidate back in the day. Unfortunately, he had an affair about the same time she was going through cancer, and it was all in the news, and he dropped out of the presidential race because of that. So think about that. She went through that. She went through cancer. She has since died, but this is her quote, which I think just fits so perfectly for all of us. Resilience is accepting your new reality, even if it's less good than the one you had. This goes so much to acceptance. So with that, I'll wrap it up and say thank you very much for being with me today. Here's my email if you want to connect with me. I love getting your emails. You are not bothersome to me, so don't hesitate to email me. And I hope you'll join me for future webinars. And in the meantime, I wish you the best in building your resilience. And with that, I'll say good night and thank you.